Everything we say, do, and think aligns us with darkness or light, love or grievance. Thus, everything is a spiritual practice, whether we are aware of it or not. We are constantly in every moment aligning with one way of being or another. The choice is ours to make each moment of the day. Ted Decker, The Forgotten Way Meditations.
Thank you for joining us for our sixth episode, where we discuss the different spiritual modalities, practices, and tools we've used to assist us on our spiritual awakening journey.
For the first 6 episodes, Jackie and I plan to discuss these topics generally, and we'll base most of the examples on our own personal experiences. As we move on in the podcast, we'll begin to look at these topics from different angles and perspectives. But before we delve into our main topic today, allow us to introduce ourselves.
I'm Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing.
And I'm Elizabeth Maria of Elizabeth Maria Unlimited.
And together, we are the hosts of Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, where we navigate the power of personal growth, self-discovery through exploration and acceptance of our shadow selves.
Thank you, Jackie. And thank you guys for joining us today as we discuss the topic of spiritual modalities, practices, and tools that helped and that are helping us during our spiritual awakening journey. There are many spiritual practices, modalities, and tools, as there are beautiful beings here, because we all interpret our path differently. And based on our environment, culture, or whatever, we may gravitate towards certain practices or begin working with certain tools discovered in our material environment. As we move forward in our podcast, we will discuss a wider range of experiences, but today we're discussing the top spiritual tools that we've personally used. Jackie, would you care to start the discussion today?
Thank you, Elizabeth. I would love to. And what an amazing episode we have planned today. And I'm really excited to maybe jump into my first exciting modality that came into my awareness, which was the Akashic Records. If you guys recall from the first pilot episode, I am a certified soul realignment practitioner, and I work at harnessing the power of the Akashic Records. A brief description of what the records are is a golden web of information that is stored within the fabric of space-time. This is a tool that I use to be able to gauge karmic attachments that may have carried into my life from other experiences, past life experiences, as well as it gives me an understanding as to what karma I am working through within this life. Through that awareness, I was able to understand myself on a grander level. And what had really drawn me to this modality was the ability to understand myself at soul level. I had spent a lot of time searching outside of myself for answers to why I was the way I am, why I felt things the way I felt them. And I really valued the opinions of other people over mine. And when I came across this program, the wording of how she was marketing her program was about learning to understand yourself at that level. And that is really what drew me in, because I was at a point where I was ready to fully take a deep dive into who I am and what I wanted out of life. And by using the Akashic Records to gauge an understanding of karmic attachments that were playing out in my current physical experience, it gave me a really deep, in-depth look into who I am on an energetic level. Through that process, I really developed a deep understanding of my sense of self. It challenged me to understand how to learn and create new karma to reshape those patterns that had been playing out. And it was really bringing the power back to myself. And as somebody who didn't trust enough in myself at that time, it was really what I needed in order to gravitate towards a more trusting version of who I am. And that is really why the Akashic Record spoke to me. It came to me very quickly. It was not easy to learn. It took a long time. It took a lot of work. I spent a lot of time working with clients before I was willing to look into myself, just to make sure it wasn't that it was right. When you hear something like Akashic Records and this golden web search for information that is embedded in the fabric of space-time, early on in my spiritual journey, I didn't know if I could trust it. It sounded right, but I really had to explore that on a deep level for myself to understand the depths of information that you can get from that. And as much as I talk about my own personal self, this also includes energetic attachments to land and environment and places within our world and throughout the universe. So it's not limited just to people or karma. There's a vast amount of information that we can discuss on the Akashic Records, and I think we'll bring more of that in as we move forward within our podcast series. But that is the reason why I gravitated towards that line of healing, because it really put the power back in my lap, and it gave me that confidence to really shape my future for myself. And I needed that at that point in my life. And that is the first main thing that came up for me on my journey. So thank you. And for you, Elizabeth, what was kind of the first thing that got you interested in working with spiritual modalities?
Oh gosh. I mean, so many different spiritual modalities came to me, and I'll touch base on this in a little bit, but probably tarot and meditation. But you actually are the one that introduced me to the Akashic Records and the whole concept. And I'll have to say that I liked what you said, that at the beginning of your spiritual journey you were still unsure if you could trust this modality, but you did it anyways because it gave you, that confidence to begin to trust your inner voice. And I also had a similar experience as far as not really trusting it, not really like, okay, here's this concept that there's this huge freaking web of information of the universe, and everything we've ever done, every laugh, every cough, every movement, is somehow collected in data. And so that was when I first heard this concept, it was honestly just too big, for me to digest. But then I started, and actually when you were talking, I wrote down two things that really struck me as helping me to understand what the Akashic Records were, is one, beginning to understand more about quantum physics and the idea of the quantum field, where all of our infinite possibilities lie. And so really learning more about quantum physics helped me to understand the Akashic. And so for those of you guys listening out there, I mean, these are some, pretty like far out there, huge concepts. And I encourage you to do your own work, and however you can enter into it. The Akashic Records, I think, has a more like spiritual or religious even connotation, just like the term even. Whereas, for people that maybe, lean more towards science, like the quantum physics might help you to conceptualize really what Jackie's talking about. And the other thing that really struck me about your understanding of the Akashic Records is this connection to land, not only to karmic past life experiences, but our connection to land. And I know that you said that, that, well, because we could do a whole podcast just on the Akashic records and the implications of it. But it made me start thinking about an area that I've been interested in and haven't done a lot of research in yet, but it's called astrocartography, which is the astrology of land. And so I would love, and possibly in future podcasts, guys, we are constantly thinking of different podcasts to do. But
It's
I
on the
would
list
love,
now.
yeah, I would love to do one on, kind of the intersection of the Akashic records and what that means as far as like astrocartography, the astrology of place for us in this carnation, like how they can kind of intertwine there. So that was really pretty
And I
uh
really appreciate you saying that, because when you talk about energy from a scientific standpoint, energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed. And when you're looking back into quantum entanglement, and please feel free, guys, this is scientific fact, it's Googleable. You can go and look at how energetic particles are connected, and once they have been connected, to always be connected. And there is no way to dispose of energy. It all gets transformed into something different, and it all goes somewhere. So when you hear a concept like every thought has an energetic attachment and every word has a vibrational frequency attached to it, that's fact. It's
yeah,
not, the concept of it being embedded into, and I like to think of it like the internet, where you tap in and it's this golden web of information. It's almost searchable if you know how to do it. And you can really learn to do that for yourself. Everybody has the ability to get in there. It does take some work, but please go ahead and do your own research on the quantum field and quantum entanglement, and it will really give you that better understanding of the interconnectedness of all things.
absolutely. Excellent. So moving forward, what were some of the some of the next spiritual modalities that came to you and during your awakening?
So for me, a big one was, I've been followed my whole life by triangles in this weird way that I would see them in my head, in my dreams, and I really couldn't figure out why they kind of kept popping up in my meditations. And at one point, I had this intuitive thought that the triangle was the embodiment of the mind, body, spirit.
Mm,
And this was all of a sudden this realization that I needed to work on all three of those items. And my body was something that I had been neglecting for a really long time. So, as somebody who is relatively unfit in a physical sense, yoga is really where I gravitated towards, because I was really working towards a stable, balanced, healthy body, mind, and spirit. And the practice of yoga really drew me in, because at its essence is these core things where you're working with your body through your meditative practice and your breath work. And it was really this interconnectedness of all three of those modalities of what I envisioned as this triangle of, I guess, this trifecta of oneness in my mind. And I really gravitated towards more of a yin style yoga
mm,
at first, to kind of facilitate a proper energetic flow within my body. I had a lot of back problems from years of not taking care of my body, bad posture, working at the computer, sitting on your cell phone. And it threw me into a medical crisis where I was forced to then take accountability for the state that I had allowed my body to get to.
mm,
And it came at in the middle of COVID, so the gyms weren't open yet. And I found an amazing, 20-minute stretch meditation on YouTube. And I was able to start with a 5 minutes of meditation and then move into a 20-minute stretch and facilitate my practice that way. And it really helped me to learn to connect to my body in a way that I had never been able to before, feeling different muscle groups, feeling the connectedness of each muscle group to pains that were in my body, and being able to support that through my breath and my intention to be able to release what not only was physical pain, but also stored emotional pain within my physical body. And being able to then link all three of those together opened up an expanded version of who I am, and allowed me really to step into this healthy version of a mind, body, spirit. And I was able then to continue to build off that. And this is a practice I continue to this day. I am working to become a certified yoga trainer. I have my own vision as to how that will look. It won't be your generic, or not, I don't want to say generic, sorry, it won't be your common yoga class. It'll be Jackie style, and that'll stay tuned for that in the coming years. But I'm working on that for my own self and my own physical enjoyment of the practice, because I just fell in love with that practice. So I can't advocate enough for the practice of yoga, and it is a continual practice for me. It will be forever now. And that's really the one that has stuck with me right from the beginning up until this point. I've had a lot of different shifts in my mind, things that were really interesting at the beginning, and filtered out and filtered through, but that has been the constant in my spiritual practice.
Beautiful.
And
Thank you. Yeah, I was just gonna say that, yoga and any type of body movement has definitely been a huge part of my spiritual practice as well. As far as yoga, I started, practicing yoga in my early 30s, and just recently I have been doing the somatic yoga, like the opening hip stretchers and stuff, and it is just a wonderful way to process, especially those stuck emotions in the body. I feel sometimes, like, I feel them releasing, and it can be a very emotional experience. So definitely a wonderful spiritual modality to help us connect. And I love how you came upon yoga through seeing the triangle and understanding that mind body spirit connection. That was really beautiful, so thank you. So what
thank
else have you
you.
been doing?
Well, like Elizabeth said, there is a lot of things that I do to facilitate my energy. A lot of them are very, like the tarot and the oracle cards, and the connection to those type of divination tools. And I continue with those as well. But I had gone on a spiritual retreat, and I was introduced to the goddess Isis. She came to me through a spiritual practitioner that was at the retreat. And I was dealing with, as you guys know, some really deep seated childhood sexual trauma. I was very disconnected from the divine feminine energy within my body. And the goddess Isis found me in that state where I was really at a point where I was ready to connect to myself as the divine feminine that I am. I wanted to feel sexual. I wanted to feel sexy. I wanted to feel comfortable looking at myself as a sexual being. And as soon as I set that intention, she came into my awareness, and I've been working with her energy ever since. One of my favorite oracle decks is the Goddess Isis Oracle from Alana Fairchild, and I use it for my spiritual ascension. I am a Sirius starseed, so connecting to Goddess Isis's story. And the one thing that stood out the most within her story was the love that she had for others, and her giving of herself to save others and to heal others through these unconditional power of love. And I've always had this ability to love people unconditionally. Unfortunately, that didn't always transmit to my own self as much as it needed to. And I really went on this path of learning about her story and connecting to that energy. And through that, I came across the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And if you guys haven't come across it, it is an amazing book, and it is also on an audio version that you can get from YouTube. So feel free to go ahead and head over to YouTube and take a little bit of information from it. But it is something that a book that you could read 100 times and you still learn new information. And the poeticness of the book and the tablets really just had me intrigued right from the get-go. So the
Yeah.
history of the Emerald Tablets dating back some 3,600 years before Christ. The author is Thoth, an Atlantean priest king who founded a colony in ancient Egypt, and he wrote the Emerald Tablets in his native Atlantean language. There is so much that we could delve into this, but in my personal opinion, it is a guide to ascension. And I don't want to give too much information about it because I don't want to put any preconceived notions into what you can expect from this book, because it speaks to you on your own personal spiritual level. And you could read it 100 times, and each time you read it, you're going to get something new from this book. I will suggest my favorite tablet is tablet number 4. And if you guys have a chance, or you've already read it, but you may have forgotten it, that is the one that spoke to me in a really deep, soulful, profound way. And I continue to listen to the tablets on audiobook through meditation, and it just continues to expand my awareness. It can be deciphered from so many levels. And I would love for you guys to discover that on your own and see how it affects you in your own journey when you hear the words and the rhythmic words of how it's written. It's almost poetry in this lovely way that you get to decipher, and it's extremely exciting, and it's something that has expanded my consciousness and my awareness, and it's really brought me to kind of where I am right now within my spiritual modality. And coming across it at this time in this moment of my ascension journey really has opened me up to a bunch of new energy. And it was the goddess Isis, I believe, who brought this into my awareness to push me down this path of ascension further and to just expand my awareness of what the ascension journey looks like. And that is kind of where I'll leave that. I don't want to put too much for anybody else. I don't want to limit your view on it. I want you to explore it for your own self and see how the words resonate to your soul. But this is really what helped me to integrate the last pieces of my shadow. So thank you, Elizabeth, for allowing me to explain that. And let me ask you, have you found anything interesting, or did you work with any Egyptian mythology and find that useful within your own spiritual practices?
Well, Jackie, as we began to plan this episode, it really gave, and I just love our podcast because it really has given me the opportunity to reflect and to go back. And I hadn't originally thought of, certain goddesses or deities coming in, energetically coming in as like a spiritual modality, but I'm not really sure why I didn't think that, because yes, absolutely. I talk about the accelerated part of my spiritual awakening, and I believe that that's, when our energy is becoming expansive and we are connecting more to, all of the collective energies, and the spirit guides come through. And so one of the first goddesses that came through for me was actually a European goddess by the name of Oya. She's the goddess of storms, wind, and it actually came through a meditation. And I felt like I had, like, when I came out of that meditation that day, I felt like I had lightning bolts coming out of my fingers. It was just like this power energy. And so I started looking it up, like lightning bolts coming out of, and that was how I discovered Oria. But then I was thinking about Egyptian mythology, and honestly, before my the accelerated part of my spiritual awakening, I really hadn't put much interest in, Egyptianology or anything. But after Oya came through, another goddess, the goddess Sekhmet, she showed herself to me. And again, through meditation, I connected with her energy. And it makes sense because I'm a Leo and she has the head of a lion. She's also the patron of physicians and a healer. And so it just made sense that her energy would come through to me in meditation. And as I was, kind of going through my notes, I just have to say this because I just love you, but I totally see us doing a photo shoot with Goddess Isis.
Do you know it's her sister?
Oh,
that is
God.
Goddess Isis' lion-headed sister. And I, when you said that, I'm like, she's my sister. She's my soul sister. And now I love it.
Oh my God, I'm just like feeling chills because, I'm just feeling the chills because let me tell you, girl, when Sekhmet came in, it was just like, bam, this is your girl. And this was I'd say about maybe a year and a half ago, her energy, but I did not make the connection. Oh my God, this is so beautiful with Isis and you and me doing this podcast together. Yeah, we're guys, out there in the ethers listening right now, you will be seeing a photo shoot. Sekhmet and Isis in the house. I love it.
I got chills. You're giving me the goosies, Elizabeth. And I honestly, yesterday when I was doing my oracle reading, I pulled the card of Temple of Carleon, and that is her card. And she was offering healing and strength for any issue that I might be ready to release at this time. And this was just yesterday. So the fact that you even said that today is the goosies.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Not that we ever think anything is not in alignment or, purposeful in this life anymore, but I still get shocked.
And I also wanted to give a shout out to my girl, Mary Magdalene. I just got to chill. She was like, "You're not going to leave me out, are you?" Because, I really, I guess also in the last year, and it was actually after my grandmother passed that I started really reading the Bible from a metaphysical perspective and kind of a similar way that you described the emerald tablets as being a guide to ascension. That's how the Bible has been coming to me over the last year, and definitely learning more about Mary Magdalene in the last year. And she was a tough ass bitch, you know what I'm saying? No offense, like out there to anyone, but she rose from the streets, and worked and was, some people say that she was a prostitute. She was Jesus's, best friend, confidant. Some people say lover. Some people say that they, actually had children together. I don't, care too much about all that history, but I do know that her energy also has come, really, really strong to me over the last year. So, excellent discussion. I just love it. Did you want to talk about any other modalities before we move on?
There is so many, and I think we'll get to so much more as we proceed. I really did want to focus on those three because it really did facilitate my vision of the mind, body, spirit aspect. And that's really goes back to, my love of triangles. And you guys see the podcast title, Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality in the Triangle. It's the vision, and I think we'll continue on with it. But I'm really more interested in just knowing a little bit more about additional tools that you've used to facilitate your healing journey.
Okay, cool. Let's move into it. So like I've discussed in a previous podcast, sound healing was really the first, kind of like how your Akashic records came in quickly. For me, it was sound healing. And I was living in a small little town in Pennsylvania, and I was definitely releasing so much dense energy, mind, body, spirit at the time that, like I said previously, I honestly felt like I was giving myself exorcisms. It was pretty crazy, period. And sound healing, a friend of mine introduced me to sound healing, and I was ready to receive it. I had said how I was actually introduced to it about 5 years before that, and I just poo-pooed it. I wasn't open enough to really understand it. But fast forward 2019, and I mean, the way that it was introduced to me, I was at a point physically where my body had been so that I had allowed my body to have been so abused that I physically wasn't, I could barely walk. I was in a state of constant physical pain. And I was also at a place where traditional medicine was not helping. I knew that I did not want to go down the pharmaceutical route. My background in holistic health and whole food health helped me out there. And but I was, honestly out of options and in so much physical pain. It like I cried when I walked. It was that bad. And so, my friend introduced me to sound healing, and I was like, okay, man, I will fucking try anything. Excuse my language. No, don't excuse it. Guys, I just say it like I say it. Anyways, and so yeah, and so I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. This is also a wonderful topic for a later podcast, but does pain have to be part of the journey? I wonder. I mean, for me, I have had to really get to that breaking point where it's before I'm open enough to be like, okay, I'll try this, sound frequency shit, whatever, I'll do it. And
I
then
think we're two peas in a pod that way a little bit, Elizabeth, where we had to learn the hard way. I'm like hearing this song in my head by Brandy. We gotta learn the hard way, and I'm like, yeah, I had to learn the hard way. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Other people may not, but
Oh,
we did.
God. Did I? Gosh. So, after using it successfully in my life and really seeing the difference, from, I started by listening to like the binaural beats, like just through YouTube, and at night I would listen to them while I was sleeping. And I mean, within a few days, I felt the difference in my body. And so really since 2019, I listened to sound healing all day, every day. I mean, that and like spiritual rap. But it is, and then I started researching sound healing, learning more about the science behind it. I'm actually in the middle of working on a sound healing certification right now. And I've learned that, sound healing can be traced back to so many ancient cultures: Tibet, China, India, Latin America, Africa, Greece. We're just talking about the Greek gods. They definitely knew the, importance of using sound, not only for like ceremonies, but as ways to heal physical, mental, spiritual ailments. And
I wanted to just point out something because I watched it just the other day, is when they were putting certain frequencies on a speaker and they put sand on it. And actually, when specific frequencies were played, the sand moved into sacred geometric shapes.
yes.
And it just shows the vibration that certain frequency holds. And it was amazing to me to see how it moved as if it was out of magic almost.
Right. Well, it's vibration, and actually, the FDA has recently approved a sound healing treatment for cancer. So, I mean, this, you can break it down to just basic science. I mean, it's, so it makes sense that the sound vibration, that it interacts with us who, because we're also wave, frequency, vibration. So I just went down the sound healing, I guess, rabbit hole, if you will. And I came across in my research a sound healer by the name of Kathleen Carlson. I think that you can find her on YouTube, but she was really the first sound healer that I started listening to, and learning more about how these certain vibrations interconnect with each of our 7 major chakras. And so basically each chakra has a particular sound, a tone. We can create certain mantras, and they're also, of course, associated with color and musical instruments as well. But I've been someone who has always been like, I'm a big energy. I like to make noise and sound with my voice. I'm not a singer, but like I kind of explained during when I was really releasing a lot of energy, one of the things that helped me was vocalizing through kind of like utterances or even like moans, just like letting this dense energy out. And so mantras has been a huge part of my of my spiritual healing journey. Say that 3 times: spiritual healing journey. Okay. Anyways, yeah, and so learning the science behind a mantra such as Namieho Renge Kyo, that was a mantra that I learned, I mean, when I was a teenager, and I never connected the sounds, the tones of the mantra to the different chakras until, I started
And
researching.
I will thank Tina Turner, or actually Angela Bassett, for playing Tina Turner in that movie, because that's the first time I ever heard that mantra. And as kids, me and my sister used to say it over and over and over again, having no idea what it meant. But
Right.
we were drawn to it, and that movie really spoke to me. What's Love Got to Do with It? Because it's famous. But the fact, I mean, I'm always surprised when you say something that resonates to my story, even though I shouldn't be
Well,
anymore.
we're sisters for sure, soul sisters. Yeah, and so and it's funny because how I was introduced to that mantra was I was hanging out with some travel kids and little 5 points, just causing a ruckus like I usually did, and they actually had it like sharpied on the inside of their VW van that they were traveling in, and
Oh.
the guy who was his name was, God, what was his name? Oh my God, it's been so long. Anyways, it doesn't matter right now. Wonderful guy, but he explained it to me, and that it really means like what will be, right? So it's just being in that present moment. But anyways, back to how learning about the sound and the mantra and the mantras and how they were really connected to each chakra, and help clear and balance each chakra really helped me to move forward in my own spiritual journey. I now use mantra, I use sound healing on a daily basis, really, to help balance my mind, body, spirit. So yeah, and definitely it has helped me to integrate the shadow, or by releasing the stuck energy through the chanting. And again, like Jackie was saying, I mean, we'll eventually have a whole podcast just on sound healing, just on the Akashic records, so we can delve deeper into it, because I would love to do a sound healing meditation. And but to move forward, how has sound healing you on your journey, or has it been a big part of healing?
Yeah, I would say that frequency is something that I am just like you, Elizabeth. I play Love Frequency in the background all day, every day. Like, it is probably what I listen to the most now. But I have also learned about water's ability to hold sound frequency. So I'm working at, as well as I actually put my headphones on my water or my Brita and infuse my water with sound frequency,
Love it.
because I believe us as, being 60% water, that frequency is coming to my body. And then I'm emitting that frequency of love at all times, as well as listening to it. But a
Yeah.
great way that I also facilitate sound healing is through karaoke. And I am somebody who was told by someone that I'm not a singer, but I have the confidence to get up there and pretend like I am. And there's some certain songs that just speak to my soul from my childhood that I love. And it's such a great release of energy to get up there and just be in your element. And I mean, maybe it's not my element because I'm not a famous singer, but be in that moment and just allow my voice to be heard, and the resonance that I have to the words of the songs that I choose. It is a release. I feel it when I leave. I feel it when I go home, and the next day I sleep, and it's just like, ah, out. And then I guess third one that I would do is because I wanted to find a more physical way to experience my spirituality, and a lot of my work is done online, and same with this podcast, we're online. So I had looked into sound baths that were being hosted at yoga centers throughout my city, and they're fairly inexpensive, but it was the most amazing experience. And I'm not somebody, like, I didn't think that I lost awareness of the time, but it was an hour and a half that went by in 10 minutes. And I
Mm.
was like, thought I was always present, but no, it journeyed me into a realm that went by in a blink of an eye. Can't say where I was or what I did, but I can tell you how I felt. And it was magical experience to be there in the room while they were playing all of the singing bowls, and they had some other beaded type, I don't know all the names. So, but it was just this beautiful experience. So I would suggest anybody who is looking for a more physical way to experience that, if with a group of other people, is to look into that, a sound bath within their community. But beautiful, because I can't wait for you to host us through your sound bath meditation, or sound healing meditation is probably the better way. But thank you for sharing that with us, and really giving us a more in-depth look as to, what has drawn you towards using frequency as a form of healing. There was something that you mentioned that when I was talking about the yogas, you were mentioning somatic movement, which, could you touch more on what that means to you?
Yes, absolutely. I am a big proponent for somatic movement therapy, dance therapy, shamanic dance, any type of movement therapy that that utilizes the body, right? I believe is a pathway to healing, particularly for those of us that are navigating releasing that trauma from the physiological body. And so, it somatic movement, somatic healing is a big buzzword right now out in the spiritual world. And then, it's really moved into the mainstream thanks to practitioners like Peter Levine. Peter Levine is the founder, and Peter Levine's my guy. I really hope one day to be able to interview him or meet him. Just give him a
I
big
think if we say his name enough, he will manifest.
yeah. Let me tell you, my guy Peter, and yes, in my head we're on a first name basis. He is the founder of the somatic experiencing method, and he describes his therapy as a body oriented approach to healing trauma and other stress disorders. And he talks about how this approach releases traumatic shock in the body. It can restore connection. It's one of the keys to transforming PTSD and any type of emotional wound especially early developmental attachment with trauma. And so what it does is that it offers a framework to assess, well, it offered framework for myself to really release that stuck energy that, occurred because I was living for so many years in the fight, flight, freeze kind of survival mode, right? And so when I started to honestly like thaw out, if you will, body movement was a huge part and still is every day. I am not someone who meditates crisscross applesauce. I have to move my body. I believe it is because of, I mean, I don't, we're all drawn to different modalities. I feel like there's several reasons that I've come to dance and somatic movement as one of the main modalities. One is that my mother, my adopted mother, who's my mom, she was a dancer. And so I actually did my first dance performance when I was 3 with her at the Unitarian Church. And I took dance all the way up until, my trauma happened when I really exit out of all positive extracurricular activities and went straight down, the rabbit hole to sex, drugs, rock and roll. But so dance was a huge part of my life I'd say the first 11 years of my life. And, it's interesting, Jackie, I was just thinking to our earlier conversation about how we really have in our spiritual awakening looped back to those childhood connections, what really resonated. And, for those of you that are listening, go back to that first 10 years. What just sung in your heart? What made you feel connected? Because those are the seeds. That is what needs to be nourished. And so, but even before I knew that, that I even kind of remembered, oh my God, I've always been a dancer. Like my body just needed to move. It has always needed to move. And then after experiencing the amount of physical trauma that I have, from domestic violence issues, but also I've been in a couple car wrecks, plus just some freaking hard living. Dance has helped, and so, and I loved when you were talking about your karaoke being a spiritual modality, because dancing, I mean, I love to booty dance. I will, and I've been listening to a lot of spiritual rap. So let's see, Spiritual Tony, Free Soul, Peach Ska, Tony Jones, Londrell. Those are just like kind of my top 5, and there's a lot of others. I mean, if you start listening to Londrell, then and Tony Jones, then a bunch of other spiritual rap will start coming up like through Spotify and YouTube Music. But I love it, and so I try to listen to 1 or 2 songs. I'll go to my back porch and I just get down and funk it down to the beat. And it takes me, and when I was, and in my kind of, research of the history of how dance connects with the body and everything, it's like a shamanic experience for me. I go I mean, I'm like, because I mean, people say that the drum is the heartbeat of Mother Gaia, right? And so I go back to some kind of ancient, ritualistic, I'm getting down and just, I mean, it is just such a beautiful flow of, and the whole time it's like, Peter Levine says, I am shaking that trauma out of the physical body. And just like you said, Jackie, with your karaoke, after doing getting down and funky dance to some spiritual rap, I sleep good that night. I sleep real
Mhm.
good. And so it's something that I have been incorporating pretty much every day since 2019. And there's all different types of somatic movement therapy. There's somatic experiencing, like I discussed Peter Levine's technique. There's also breath work. It's really all about any type of movement that can help the individual get back in their bodies. As I'm saying this, I'm kind of like literally like tapping my body right now. It was, because during trauma for me, one of my coping strategies was to disassociate, and we've talked about that. And so I have no problem with, I mean, I can get to my happy place in the ethers like in a second, but we're working on getting balance back into the body, so that mind body spirit connection. And because I thought anyways that mind and spirit, I'm good, but I really neglected my body for a long time. So the body work that I do now is, I mean, I do get down and funky with the spiritual rap. But especially in the mornings, I start with like kind of a qigong, I think that's how you pronounce it, practice, just a real gentle with my body, a real nice flow. So, those of you that are listening, if you're into any type of body movement, continue to do it. Your body wants you. Oh, and another thing, just like Jackie, you were talking about with, talking and infusing your water with vibrations of love. When I'm doing my body movement exercises, I talk to all the cells in my body. I talk to all of my organs. I tell, especially like my lungs and stuff, I put a lot of, substances in my body, and I'm like, thanks guys for hanging tough with me for almost 5 decades. Thank you guys, and the cells. Thank you for, creating little universes. I mean, because really our body is, I mean, this is like our physical universe, and it really is a wonderful meditation, dance meditation in any form, somatic movement on any form. So I use somatic movement with my clients, in a session. I mean, we get up and move the body, because I believe in the importance of body movement to help integrate those energies, especially the dense ones. So yeah, thanks for asking, Jackie. And what about you? With
Well, when it comes, it's funny because when you talk about the drum, the first thing that went back to my mind was the drum and bass that I used to listen to at rave when I was younger. And the music in rave music is very much sound frequency type music, and the vibration of it when you're in that atmosphere and everybody is on that same frequency, and the energy level that you can feel and the freeness of being able to dance and move. And I relate my style of dance to Elaine Bennis. It's more of what we were just dancing the other weekend, and it's more like a tree waving. And it was really challenging me for at first because dance clubs don't open till 10 o'clock, and I'm in bed at 8 o'clock. And so I had a hard time at first, like being able to just dance by myself. I felt like even though I was by myself, I was like self-conscious about it, unless I had had a few drinks or something like that. But having you say that reminds me how much I love to dance, and just really incorporating a practice like you said, the qigong or the tai chi is really something I think now I'm going to take another look at it, and really, because it is that more fluidity type movement, and focusing on using my own frequency of my voice to send my body love. Like you saying that is like you're putting love vibration into your voice, into each muscle of your body that you have may neglected, or you slept on that one shoulder wrong. And now I can see how you can facilitate that vibrational frequency into your own self using your own voice. And just listening to you describe the somatic movement that's where kind of where my mind went as to how I can incorporate my own physical movement with adding frequency. So it's really interesting how you just kind of conceptualize those two things for me there. And I really love that. So thank you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about is, the exchange of ideas and practices. And, I'll, move forward to the last kind of, and not kind of, the last spiritual practice that has been probably one of, uh, it's hard to say which has been the most important because all of them. And I like how, you talked about how different spiritual practices, it's mind, body, spirit. And the last practice that I have used consistently, honestly, my whole life is tarot. And tarot is probably one of the most popular divination tools in the world today, and I believe that it's also misunderstood to a lot of people, especially those that are lean towards more traditional religious institutions, may think that tarot is evil somehow, which I don't understand how any animate object or inanimate object in this realm could be evil when we're God. Like everything here is created by God. And so I don't subscribe to that. But there's different ways that people have used tarot over the years. The more kind of the popular conception of tarot is that of like the fortune teller and being able to tell the future. The way that I think about tarot is from a bit of a different perspective. I believe that I use the cards to connect energetically with either where I'm at in the present or when I'm working with a client, and that the cards actually act as a symbolic representation of that energy frequency. When I was researching, because I guess early on in my intuitive guidance practice, I knew that I wanted to incorporate tarot, oracle, and angel cards, which are, the three cards that I really use. And so I just started like typing in like tarot and social work, tarot and psychology to see if other practitioners had made that connection. And there really wasn't a whole lot of people doing it about 3 years ago. But I just recently found a guy who is using tarot in his practice here in Georgia, which I thought was pretty cool because before that, I had just found one woman out in California, and her name is Jessica Frucher. And she uses tarot with her clients, where again, she's guiding them with the symbology of the cards. And then I came across a practitioner by the name of Stan Gentry, and he gave an excellent overview of the cards that I just want to go down and break down how he talks about them. And so the cards themselves, the major arcana, you can look at as different characters from the hero's journey, which we know is the idea of the collect. Well, I don't know if you guys know, and we'll probably do a whole podcast just on the hero's journey at some point, but it's the idea that Carl Jung, the psychologist Carl Jung, began to develop through his studies on the collective consciousness. And because he started seeing very similar archetypes in different cultures, he was a psychologist and I believe also a folklorist. Anyways, and so, he developed this idea of the hero's journey and the different characters. And so the 22 cards in the major arcana begin with the Fool. And the Fool is going on a adventure and takes that initiative. And it's interesting because a lot of people look at the Fool as a negative idea, but really the Fool is the one that is taking that leap of faith, right? And starting out on their journey alone with their little dog, and they're willing to do it. And so the cards progress from the Fool all the way through each major life event that is archetypical in our human experience. And this includes the development of relationships with nature, with spirituality, with learning about wisdom, all of this push and pull from external forces. The cards, go through periods of falling in love, and all of these different developmental moments in our shared experience, right? And then you can look at the minor arcana cards as basically, examining the day-to-day experiences that we have in life, right? And so the cards themselves as a deck, they allow us ways that we can investigate people, relationships, and decisions that we have in life. So once I energetically connect, then I ask Great Spirit to guide. And you guys, everyone can do this themselves, right? Sometimes it's best to work with someone while you're developing, if that's what you feel you need to do. But for me, I get into a spiritual flow state, and then I basically just say out loud, and again through our discussion of vibration, so using certain words. I tend to talk to my cards and rhyme, so show me what I need to see to create the life where I want to be, or something like that. And I like sing song kind of rhymes, and I do that a lot in my practice anyways, and I think that connects to me being a writer. And I love Dr. Seuss too. That was a total side note. But yeah, so I connect to the cards, and then the ones that I pull, from that introspective place, or if I'm working with a client, the ones that they pull can be used again as a symbolic representation of the energetic frequency that they are emitting. Now, what about the future, or the idea of them being fortune telling cards or whatever? And this actually goes back to our beginning understanding of the Akashic records, right? That everything is actually happening now, right? So past the past, present, and future, our linear understanding of time is a concept that we created to just break down these chunks of moment into something that we can comprehend, right? And so the past, present, and future, from a quantum or an Akashic perspective, are all happening at once anyways. So there really is no future. So what we're doing energetically is tapping into quantum possibilities. Bam! In the field. What? And it's a lot. I'm just feeling the flow of energy right now. That's the best way that I can describe what is happening when a card is showing us certain actions that we could take, or possibilities of the future, is that it is symbolically showing us possibilities from the field. Yes. So that is thank you, Great Spirit. I mean, just so many chills. Because I've, as a intuitive guide and someone who uses tarot in my practice, I know that I have I've had a lot of misunderstandings about what this practice entails. So I hope that that explains it a little bit. And I can say that how tarot has helped me to integrate my own shadow is really helping me to learn to trust my own intuition. And so using the cards for me, like again, when I'm using them for myself, I'll go into kind of a flow trance state, and however I get there, usually body movement, meditation, putting on some, great music, or just honestly now I can get there pretty quick. But at the beginning I needed to rev up the engine, so to speak.
Mhm.
um and then tapping in, and really, one, it gives me that time for introspection to go within, and then to begin to increase that awareness of my own intuition. And with any type of spiritual modality, it's about like taking what you need from it and leaving the rest, like whatever resonates. I know that word is a big buzzword in the spiritual community, but for a good reason, because take what resonates and leave the rest. And I am not a tarot scholar. I know that there are tarot scholars out there. um there's a lot of history that I think people kind of get their panties in a wad about, honestly, about the origins of tarot. And, when I was doing the history, or like looking in and researching the history of tarot, what came to me was this idea of the difference about being a literary scholar and a writer. And so for me, being someone with an academic background, literary scholar is someone who is researching other people that wrote, and a writer is someone that is actually doing the writing. And it's funny because when I was in academics, the creative writers, that the groups that I was in, we were kind of considered like the bastard child of the English department. It's like, oh, you crazy writers. And I'm like, dude, you're going to be studying me in 100 years, what the fuck, you know what I mean? And so I kind of think the same way about tarot and how I practice and how I use tarot, because it's very different than the traditional, more, I guess, mainstream concept of what tarot is. So hopefully all of that like explained kind of my position on tarot, how I use it in my own practice, and ways that you guys out there can also utilize this, very long-standing and popular spiritual modality in your own life.
Beautiful. And you know what? I feel the same way about tarot, and I have been dabbling myself within the tarot for the last few years. And it is to me all about picking up the energy of the situation that you are investigating. And when you're talking about future outcomes, it's the how to pick up the energy that's coming in, and then you can then choose how to make choices that align that energy to the outcome you want. It's not telling you what to do, it's giving you options as to how to capitalize on the energy. And
Yeah.
just like you said, I use the cards maybe in not the way that the mainstream would. I get a vibration from the card. I get a feeling from the picture or the illustration that's on the card, the colors that are used in the different decks, and it gives me a different feeling. So, pulling one of those cards one time doesn't mean I'm going to feel the same way about the card the next day. And it really is about taking what resonates to me in the situation that I'm asking about, and using that as a way to kind of bring me back to the present, and connect back to my thoughts and my feelings and my emotion on the topic that I'm looking for at the time. And you said it so beautifully, and there is no wrong way to do your own spiritual practices. You don't have to follow everybody's mainstream version of it, and that limited belief, I think, and we've talked about it a lot, in a lot of the things that we've talked about today now, there is no one way. Your way is your way. And if it works for you, you continue it. If it doesn't, you find something that does.
Absolutely, Jackie. Absolutely. And I think that that is a wonderful place to end today's podcast. Figure it out, do what resonates, and enjoy the process, guys.
Enjoy the process.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today while we began to lift the veil around beginning to create your own spiritual toolbox, right? What works for you? We hope that we got to introduce you to some spiritual tools and practices that we use that will help inspire you to develop your own spiritual toolbox. Your comments and perspectives are important to us. So please reach out, guys. Send an email, comment, whatever. This is about creating creative, spiritual community. And if you have any questions for us to explore or any other questions concerning our podcast, contact us at sexdrugsandspiritualitypodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And as we went through today, you guys got to hear a little bit about what we do within our own personal businesses. So if you are interested in contacting us about any individual client offerings, please go ahead and follow the link that's listed in the description box below. Don't forget to make sure to mention that you heard about us on Spotify, because we look forward to connecting with our spiritual community at 11 p.m. every Saturday night on Spotify to explore and integrate the shadow sides of our reality. So until next episode, guys, love and light.
Love and light, guys.
Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality Podcast. Elizabeth Maria, Unlimited LLC. And Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing is not responsible nor liable for any advice, course of treatment, diagnosis, or any other information, services, or products that you obtain through this website.